We're here with a 1999 Ducati ST4. It's another bike build. Welcome to Hack a Week. So here we are back in the old garage after well over a year away from doing anything with bikes. Didn't even really get a chance to ride much last summer. Been pretty busy with Resto Euro, my business. I actually started a business this month, in fact, is the 1-year anniversary of that business. So anyway, about maybe 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, something like that, I started thinking about the summer season coming up and the BMW, and do I want to keep the BMW? It's a 630-pound sport touring beastie that is a lot of fun to ride. It really leans toward the sport end of sport touring. But it's 630 pounds, it's got a high center of gravity, and I've had my fun on it. I put about 8,000 miles on that bike, went all over the place, did the whole Blue Ridge Parkway, all the way to New York and back up into the Adirondacks, a few other trips to the mountains in North Carolina, and just decided it was time for something new, something different. So I decided to start looking for Ducatis, and got on Craigslist, started shopping around a bit, picked out a few that I liked. I've always loved the 916 for some reason. I think it was the first Ducati I saw up close back in the mid-90s when it came out, and I just liked everything about it. I liked the way it looked, I liked the finish on the metal, I liked the frame, whole bike. And I've always been attracted to things Italian, and so I started looking for Ducatis and worked my way toward an ST4, which is a sport touring bike that Ducati made. Weighs about 517 pounds, I guess. I'm not sure if that weight is with bags and all that, but anyway, 517 versus 630 for the BMW. I figured that's a good bike to shop for. Then I decided to go ahead and put the BMW on Craigslist. So I put it up. 2 days later, I saw a ST4 that this gentleman wanted 2,000 for, so I approached him via Craigslist email and asked him if he was interested in a trade with some cash, his bike, and some cash for the BMW, and we arrived at a deal, and I went and picked it up yesterday, and here it is. So his idea was to turn it into a naked bike. The reason being is he tipped it over in his driveway once, landed on the grass, but it cracked some fairing pieces. That kind of bummed him out. And then he had it parked somewhere on the street, and a guy in a Harley pushed his bike backwards. People saw this, knocked it over. That cracked the other side of the fairings. I guess the guy didn't have insurance, whatever. At that point, he just decided, you know, what the hell, maybe I'll turn this into a naked bike. So he pulled all the fairings off. He sold off the stuff that he could of those fairings. There's still some left. We'll get to that in a minute. But he started to do the project as a naked bike, and there's been some work done on it, but it was kind of his idea of what he wanted to do. There's a lot of stuff that's been cut on the wire harness, etc., etc. So I've been thinking about it for a few days now. We arrived at this deal well over about a week ago. I went and picked it up yesterday, finalized the deal. I got it home now, and I've been contemplating what am I going to do with this bike. Now, I know a lot of people have been already in my little teaser video saying, make a naked bike out of it, you know, do something really cool. But I'm not going to go full bore crazy like I did on the Sabre build. I want to keep things pretty well intact the way they are, I think. I may do some stuff where I maybe do a few modifications on where I have the battery mounted, etc., because the battery used to be mounted externally on the frame up front under the fairings. Lots of stuff was hidden under the fairings on this bike. So I've got to figure out where I'm going to put all those components. He started to do some stuff where he was working on putting it under the seat, etc., etc. I think my approach to this is going to be leave everything pretty well stock as far as suspension, handling, and all of that. I'm not going to go crazy trying to chop things up. You know, on that note, I've said this before, I really hate seeing people get a bike and just start, you know, hacking, to use the derogatory end of that term, the hell out of a bike and sacrificing handling and safety for the sake of a look. If that's what you want to do and that's your thing, that's fine. You know, and good luck riding the thing if you screwed up the geometry on it or decided to do some crazy thing to the suspension. All that shit matters. The engineers put a lot of work into bikes. And some people go chopping up the rear and they put on monoshocks where there was duals, but there's a lot going on with geometries and stress points, and you can really ruin the handling of a bike doing that. Now, if that's what you want, if you just want something you can show up on the street and it looks really cool and you get a lot of comments from people, hey man, awesome looking bike, so be it. You go right ahead and do that. That is not what I want. I want something that I can get up in the twisties and is going to handle really well. It's going to take care of me. So I'm going to leave the handling situation alone on this bike. I'm going to leave some of the fairings on. I'm not going to put it back to the full faired look that it had. It kind of looks okay, but there's something about that windshield on the ST4 that just kind of is like, it's odd to me. It just doesn't quite look right. So I think what I'm going to do is go with the look that was on the 1972 Paul Smart race bike. He won the Imola 200 on a Ducati back then. Interesting story. I'll put a link to the little story about it in the video description down there. Check that out. It's really neat. But I'm going to go with a fairing like that, I think. AirTech makes a fairing that is a duplicate of that one with a low windshield. So it's the old school fairing, you know, really round. The windshield comes up to about here. And keep all the stock instrumentation, etc. Leave all of the stuff around the engine naked, and go ahead and have the option, if I want to put the touring bags on, which I got with the bike, and take a long trip on it without having to wear a backpack or do some other thing to carry my goodies with me. So that's the plan for now. We'll see where it goes. I guess you could call it kind of a cafe Streetfighter if you wanted to put it in some category of what I'm going to do with this thing. So, after that long-winded introduction, let's take a look at what I got in this package. First, let's take a look at the bike. So here's the way it is, the way I got it. Pretty well stripped down, pretty naked, actually. And I kind of like that. I love the trellis frame on these Ducatis. Really pretty finish on it. There's no instrument cluster on here right now. The bike does not run right now. It can be made to run, and that's what I'm going to do. First thing I'm going to do is get it running. I'm not going to do any mods, not going to do anything, and anybody doing a bike build, that's what I would suggest. You see that a lot on the forums, especially the caferacer.net forum. First thing a lot of those guys tell people is go ahead, get the bike running first, take it out, drive it, assess what's going on with it, then decide what it is you want to do with the bike. Because first and foremost, you need to make sure everything works and it runs. So that's the approach I'm going to take. We'll get this thing running first of all. But there's the bike. Over here we've got the mounts for the rear panniers. There they are, right there. There is a Monster fairing that he bought. He was going to put that on. He already did the Monster headlight. You can see that right there. Those are a couple of windshields that were on the original fairing. This one's a clear one. That one's tinted, and it's got a little bit more of a rise to deflect a bit more wind away from the rider. This goes under the nose cowl. That's the belly pan. Let's see, this would be the right side fairing. That's intact. I don't have any of the left side fairing. These pods go on the rear, just below the seat. They would go like right in here. I may or may not put those on. We'll see what happens with that. That's the original headlight mount that went on the thing. And there's also ducts there that run back to the air box to help direct air in. That was the stock headlight setup. And over here we've got some Colorite paint that he ordered, which is cool. That's the wire harness. He cut it up pretty good, because he was planning on rerouting things and then splicing everything back together later. The good news is there is an entire stock wire harness that was included with it. So first order of business is put this harness back in and make the bike run. I've got a brand new braided fuel line to install, a new cover that he had for one of the mufflers, because when it did tip over at one point, it hit, I guess, a curb when the Harley guy nailed it and dented that up a bit. Let's see, we got the, oh, here's a whole extra muffler assembly. Problem is, it says it was from a 98 to 02 ST4. However, the diameter of that is too small. It doesn't fit on the header pipe. So let's see, there is the toolkit and the owner's manual. This piece goes on top of the tank. That's the assembly that goes below the tail light in the rear to mount the license plate. There's the stock clocks. I think I'm going to put those back on because this LCD display gives me water temperature, gives me fuel, a couple other things. There's a clock in there. That's the monster clocks that he was going to put on. This is the battery that was in the bike that was mounted along the side, upper, or the forward right side on the upper portion of the frame. There's the stock air box. There's some trick things to do to that to gain a little bit more horsepower. All this stuff, miscellaneous bracketry that went on it. There is the coolant overflow tank. These levers were replaced with some different levers. I'm not sure where this goes. More bracketry. There's an extra speedometer cable. And that about covers it. That's all the goodies that I got with the bike. Okay, let's take a look under the seat. I get the key in the back here. There's a lock. Turn that. We'll pop the seat off. And this is where he was relocating some stuff to this area. He's got some relays back here. He put the battery back here underneath the seat in a nice little box. Pretty good sized battery. So basically I have two batteries with this bike. There is the ECU electronic control unit for the fuel injection. And the tank lifts up. Let's see, there's a little rubber strip here. And then this is a nice feature on the ST4. You lift this up. And somewhere under here, I read, there's a little, there it is, there's a little rod right here that you lift up. And it lets you rest the tank like that when you're doing service. So you don't actually have to pull the gas tank while you're servicing the bike on the little bits underneath. Right down there is where the fuel pump and fuel level sensor live and all that. And right there is an intake. There's another intake down there. He was going to put pod filters on this. I may go back with the stock box because it's a little bit quieter. The pod filters are pretty noisy. So down here to the engine. Ducati's kind of had this reputation of being unreliable. I don't think that it's so much that they're unreliable as it is that people neglect doing the timing belts when they're supposed to be done because it's so expensive to do them. If you take this to a shop and you get the timing belts done every 12,000 miles like you're supposed to do, it can run you anywhere from $800 to $1,000 to get all that service done. And that's pretty expensive. So people tend to blow it off, and then if you bust a timing belt, I don't know if it's an interference engine, but it certainly can't be a good thing if you do that. So they got this reputation of being unreliable, but I really think that's not the case. I have read plenty of stories about people taking them cross country on plenty of long trips if they're properly maintained. So in future videos, what we're going to do here is we're going to go through the whole thing of how to do the timing belts, how to adjust the valves. Incidentally, the valves on a Ducati are desmodromic valves. There are no valve springs. There's an opening cam and a closing cam. You take a look at this little animation here, you can see how the closing cam and opening cam work. It's really cool. It's a really nifty little piece of engineering. So we'll get into that in a later video, and that's a lot of what this whole series is going to be about: the maintenance of the beastie, how to take care of it, how to adjust the valves, how to put in the timing belts. Another thing about Ducatis is they have a dry clutch. This one has the open clutch cover, helps keep the clutch a little bit cooler if you're really on it and driving the hell out of it, because the clutch discs get hot. There's no oil to keep them cool, right? So they're going to get warm. But this is the way most race bikes, like MotoGP bikes, you see the clutch just sitting there out in the open. It's a dry clutch. They make a hell of a racket when they're sitting there idling, and most people think something's wrong with them, but Ducati owners, they hear that like it's music. It's the music of the clutch, you know, the dry clutch. It's kind of a kang, 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 kang noise, and you'll see when I get this thing running what it sounds like. When you pull the clutch in, the noise goes away, but when you let it out, it's back. And when you're on the throttle, it goes away. When you're kind of in a neutral, unloaded position, the noise comes back. But that's normal for a Ducati. That's what they do. But it's a really cool engine. It's a 90-degree twin. Because of that, the vibration is minimal, as opposed to like a parallel twin, like an old Triumph, that'll just shake your fillings out of your head. So we'll get into doing the maintenance and stuff like that on the bike as well. So as I said, first order of business is to get rid of this rat's nest of a wiring harness. It's kind of a mess here now. I don't even want to try to sort it out. I'm just going to put the other stock wiring harness back in, get the fuel lines installed, and make sure there's oil in it, gas, etc. And then we'll fire it up and see how it runs. Get all this old wiring harness out of here. Lots of wire ties holding things on. We're just going to pull the whole works out. Start over. You know what, I'm going to save myself a little time and maybe just cut some of this stuff. I think I'll just take the tank off for now, get it out of my way. There's a little clip right here that you pull off, and then there's a washer that I just dropped down into the abyss. We'll find that. And there's a pin. Pull the pin, and off comes the tank. I think the best way to pull this out now is everything from the rear that way. The ECU harness. There's a spring tab on the side. You push that forward, and then you can undo the harness, unclip that from the ECU. And we've got some goodies back here. Some of these plugs and the fuses, trying to get them through this tight space is pretty tough. So I think what I'm going to do is pull off the mud guard here, for lack of a better term for it. It's not really the fender, it just kind of protects all of this stuff from the elements here. He's got the battery mounted in this. He made a box for it, so we're just going to pull that out for now. And we'll take all this business out, and then we're going to pull out this liner here. Not a bad little piece of fabrication this guy did here with this box. There we go. That is off. That's going to make things a whole lot easier. Now we can just pull this stuff. Hello! We can just pull this stuff right out. Through here. And then through here. The thing with wire harnesses, when you're pulling them out, if you kind of pull one connector through at a time, makes it a bit easier rather than trying to yank the whole spaghetti mess at once. Ha! Spaghetti! Yeah, it's an Italian thing. I think I'm going to learn Italian before I'm done with this bike. I'll run around talking it like Valentino Rossi. Yeah, anyway. Here we go. That mess is out of the way. Whew. Now we get to put the other harness back in. The rear section's in. It's hooked to the ECU. It runs forward, but then I'm a little unsure just where it routes. So I'm going to have to do a little research on the internet, look at my service manual, see if I can find just exactly where the wire harness does route. Also noticed that on this harness, this is a used harness, it's not brand new, it's been clipped right here. There's a relay that goes on there. I do have that on the old harness. It is right here. It's just a little relay. I can connect that up okay. Another thing I noticed too is that as the harness runs forward, this plug goes into another sub harness, I guess, the front harness that goes up to the instrument cluster, and that's what all this is right here, this whole mess. This is, you know, the plug I just showed you. This is what it looks like with the cover removed, and it plugs into another harness, and this all goes up to the clocks, the instrument cluster. So I've got to figure out that too. I may have to go searching on eBay or wherever and see if I can find the front harness. So that's the first little hurdle I got to get over. Well, that's about as naked as you can get right there. God, I love that trellis frame. That is just so cool with the engine in there as a stressed member of the frame. So I guess I got to get on the old computer, do some research, and see if I can find a front harness that'll work on a 99 ST4. So this is pretty exciting. Really looking forward to having the bike done by, let's see, sometime around probably April, so I can get to Eurobike Raleigh with it. Lots of Italian bikes showed up last year, and last year I was in the BMW lineup. This year I'll be in the Ducati lineup. Pretty cool. Maybe next time we'll fire it up. I sure hope so. Anyway, this is the first installment of many to come. So thanks for watching. Thanks for all the donations. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time. And thanks for the donations. Thanks, just thanks.